Hello and welcome to the Top of the Progs David Bowie special. You're currently listening to Sound and Vision from David Bowie's tremendous 1977 LP, Low. What an absolutely fantastic track there from David Bowie, one of my all-time favourites. Hello and welcome to the first ever Top of the Progs special, focusing on the life and career of the starman, the legendary Mr. David Bowie, who, this Wednesday the 8th, would have turned 73 years old, as he tragically passed away from cancer at the age of 69, just 2 days after his birthday on January 10th, 2016. There have been many debates over the years about what category Bowie's music falls under, and for me, I would definitely class his music as prog or progressive because he kept on progressing throughout his career and he never just settled with one musical style or visual style, whereas many artists, what they do is they progress to a certain point and then they just make albums like the successful album, but David Bowie was never happy doing that. He just kept on progressing and changing his sound and changing his style and experimenting with many different types of production. The music for the first track of this special dates all the way back to 1968, when a young David Bowie went to the pictures to see Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, one of the all-time great sci-fi films. Fast forward to early 1969, and inspired by this and his breakup with his then-girlfriend Hermione Farthingale, he penned a song about an astronaut who launches into space and then tragically dies and loses contact with ground control, or the Earth, which David later said was used as a metaphor to represent how he felt at the time. The cold, lonely isolation of space, the sort of desolation of you being trapped in your little bubble all on your own. Bowie then created a demo of the track with his friend John Hutchinson and sent it to practically every record company under the sun until he received a one-album deal from Mercury Records. Bowie then recorded a version of the track for the BBC to use on their Apollo 11 coverage, which is a tiny bit ironic considering Major Tom dies in the track. Although Bowie was unhappy with this version, he then re-recorded it and recorded the classic version which we all know and love today. This track is called Space Oddity, featuring the legendary Rick Wakeman on mellotron and the equally legendary Herbie Flowers on bass.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. 10. Ground control 9, to Major Tom. 8, 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Check ignition 1, and may God's love be off with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirt you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in a tin can.
What an absolutely awesome track there. Now, that track there was David Bowie's first ever taste of success. Unfortunately, though, the success did not last, as many critics and producers just saw it as just sort of a novelty record, really, to capitalise on the success of the Apollo 11 mission, which was released around the same time of 1969. Producer Tony Visconti also passed up producing that song because he also at the time just felt it was nothing more than a little novelty record. But once he heard it back, he just realised it was a fantastic song and that the song would pretty much outlive that event and it wouldn't be tied to it for very long. What a fantastic track. Bowie's next step after this was assembling one of the greatest backing bands of all time, later known as the Spiders from Mars. The band consisted of guitarist/pianist/string arranger Mick Ronson, drummer Woody Woodmansey, and bassist Trevor Bolder, three Yorkshire lads from Hull. This next track is widely regarded as one of Bowie's all-time greats, and I heartily agree. And it's from his 1971 album Hunky Dory. This is sort of just the all-time classic David Bowie track, and it also features a fantastic piano part from Rick Wakeman and an equally fantastic guitar solo and genius string arrangement from Mick Ronson. This one's called Life on Mars.
It's a god-awful small affair to the girl with the mousy hair, but her mummy is yelling no, and her daddy has told her to go. But her friend is nowhere to be seen. Now she walks through her sunken dream to the seat with the clearest view, and she's hooked to the silver screen. But the film is a sad thing for she's lived it 10 times or more. She could spit in the eyes of fools as they ask her to focus on sailors fighting in the dance hall. Oh man, look at those cavemen go. It's the freakiest show. Take a look at the low man beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know who's in the best-selling show. Is their life on Mars? It's on America's tortured brow that Mickey Mouse has grown up a cow. Now the workers have struck for fame, 'cause Lennon's on sale again. See the mice in their million hordes, from Ibiza to the Norfolk Broads. Rule Britannia is out of bounds, to my mother, my dog and clowns. But the film is a sad thing for, 'cause I wrote it 10 times or more. It's about to be writ again, as I ask you to focus on sailors fighting in the dance hall. Oh man, look at those cavemen go. It's the freakiest show. Take a look at the low man beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know who's in the best-selling show.
Oh, one of my all-time favourites there. I just absolutely love that track, and I just never get tired of listening to it. That was the track, for all you who know me, you know I love playing piano. That was the track that originally inspired me to learn the piano. It's just a fantastic part. A couple of years ago, I was able to attend one of Ken Scott, who produced that song. I was able to attend one of his lectures, and he told the story of the ending of the Life on Mars track with the phone ringing. He explained that at Trident Studios, where the track was recorded, there was a payphone in the toilets, and nobody knew the number for it, and it was effectively useless. It was just basically a brick. It never rang, no one ever used it, until the end of the perfect take of Life on Mars, when right at the end, someone, lo and behold, called the payphone. Rick Wakeman stopped playing the piano outro, and all the musicians started cursing. David and the band, however, really liked the sort of sound effect with the phone ringing, and faded it out before the cursing began. The album which that song appeared on, Hunky Dory, however, was not commercially successful upon release, and it was not popular until re-released a few years later. Once again, undiscouraged by this, David Bowie decided to adopt a persona and a concept for the next album, and transformed himself into Ziggy Stardust, and released his seminal 1972 album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. This was Bowie's first ever taste of mainstream success in the UK, and his next objective was to break America, which he did using a cunning plan from his management. This was to have him drive around America in limousines, have personal bodyguards follow him everywhere in public, and to stay in the best hotels the country had to offer. This was all part of the illusion of tricking the American public into thinking that he was a super famous megastar, and that the American public was stupid for not knowing who he is. And this trick worked for Bowie, as he soon appeared on the front cover of every American magazine and news publication, and this publicity boost in America also made him even more popular in the UK. At this point, David Bowie's live band were absolutely on fire, and just the live performances from that era, whether bootlegs or officially released, are just phenomenal. This next track is taken from a live show in Hammersmith in London in 1973, and it's a fantastic live rendition of his classic track, Ziggy Stardust. It's just absolutely fantastic, and for me it trumps the album version in practically every way. I hope you enjoy it.
Guitar, jamming good with weird and the spiders from Mars, when he played it left hand, but he made it too far, became the special man, then we were Ziggy's band. Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down the hairdo, like some cat from Japan. He could kill them by smiling, he could leave them to hang. Well, he came on so lonely, man, he had a snow white tan. So where were the spiders, while the fire tried to break our bones, just to be a right to guide us. So the bound spans and shirt with just his sweet hand. Oh yeah. Ziggy played for time, jiving us up. We were voodoo. The kids was just crass. He was the Nas with God-given ass, but he took it all too far. But boy, could he play guitar. Made me love with his ego. Oh yeah, chicken sucked up to hell's mind. Oh, like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to oh yeah.
Just an absolutely fantastic rendition there. I just absolutely love that. It just has such a sort of fresh, even though the studio version and the album version is fantastic, that version just has this sort of this wonderful freshness and just this rawness, and it just adds to the whole sort of Ziggy persona and the character. And when you watch it as part of the film Ziggy Stardust the Motion Picture, it's just absolutely phenomenal. After the release of Ziggy Stardust, Bowie released 5 more seminal albums from 1973 to 1976. However, by the time 1976 rolled around, Bowie was not in a good place and he was not very happy. He was tired of being David Bowie, he was tired of the limelight, and he was tired of record companies pressuring him, saying, oh, you must make a hit single, and oh, this hit's okay, and oh, this one's not as good as your last one, make another Life on Mars. And he decided he wanted to do an album of entirely what he wanted to do, and he wanted to rewrite his writing and recording process. He wanted to create an album so creative and artistic and progressive that his fans wouldn't buy it and he'd be able to retire, and yet he'd be really personally satisfied and he'd just be able to retire to the country and just become a painter. That's, at that time, all he really wanted to do. He achieved this by calling on legendary synth and production genius Brian Eno. He approached Brian with the wish to create a trilogy of albums in which David Bowie would rewrite his entire creative process, and basically write without no limitations. Brian Eno was intrigued by this and was definitely up for it, and Bowie brought in old friend and producer Tony Visconti to help with some of the production. The album ended up being one side of progressive art rock and one side experimental soundscape tracks. The LP, eventually titled Low, received mixed reviews upon release and is now regarded as one of Bowie's all-time classics. This next track is one of my favourites from the album, and it features a very emotional vocal from Bowie and just has a very odd sonic quality and texture, and it just sounds very spooky and sort of very alien, and it reflects David Bowie at the time. This next track is called Warsaw. Absolutely fantastic track there from Low. It's probably one of the most progressive songs Bowie ever did, and it was one of the first tracks when I heard Low. It just stuck out to me straight away. It's just been absolutely fantastic. Um, When David Bowie submitted Low for release to his record company sent it back with a note saying side 1 is okay and side 2 needs work. After receiving these instructions, he altered nothing on the album and sent it back for release. After the album's release, Bowie, Eno and Visconti started to work on its follow-up, and seeking some interesting guitar playing, David Bowie called upon the services of Robert Fripp from King Crimson and asked if he'd be up for playing some hairy rock and roll guitar. Fripp then responded by saying he'd not played guitar in a while, but if they were willing to take a chance, so was he. The next morning, Fripp flew out to Hansa Studios in Berlin where the album was being recorded. This next album, eventually titled Heroes, was another landmark for Bowie's creativity. This next track is the title track from that album, and this track is called Heroes.
Dolphins can swim. Though nothing will keep us together. We can beat them forever and ever. Oh, we can be heroes just for one day.
Heroes is probably my favourite David Bowie track, just because every time you hear it, your brain is drawn to something different. It has a unique quality where every time you listen to it, it sounds like a new song because there's so much going on and so many sort of little synthesizer sweeps or guitar licks or motifs in it. Your brain always hangs on to something different and it just sounds like a new track every time. It baffles me that reviewers at the time absolutely hated the track, and when I was researching this, I found an NME review of the song from 1977, the year of its release, and this I just thought was really funny. The reviewer states that Bowie had run his course and that the track sounds weary, and I just thought, God, that's just terrible, isn't it? That's just absolutely the opposite of what happened. I just thought something about that was just really funny. After the release of Heroes, the production trio of Eno, Visconti and Bowie regrouped for the final album in the trilogy titled Lodger. Although at this point the three of them were running a little bit low on creative juice, and Bowie, like throughout his career, he was ready to move on to something else and do something completely different. For Bowie's next album, he re-recruited producer Tony Visconti to what I believe to be his best album from start to finish, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. This album was very heavy and hard-hitting and dissonant on a first listen, but after a few listens you begin to understand that it's supposed to sort of sound that way, and you sort of start to appreciate all the bum notes for them, and you start to appreciate it for the masterpiece it is. David Bowie also re-recruited Robert Fripp for this album, and he laid down some of his most memorable guitar lines ever and some of his craziest and some of his most dissonant sounding. This next track was the lead single from that album, and it's a sequel to his first ever hit Space Oddity, revisiting his character Major Tom. This track is called Ashes to Ashes.
Do you remember a guy that's been in such an old song? I've heard a rumor from ground control. Oh no, don't say that's true. They got a message from the action man. I'm happy, hope you're happy too. I've loved all I've needed love, saw the details fall away. The shrieking when nothing is given, just pictures of chap girls and synthesis. And I ain't got no money and I ain't got no hands. But I'm hoping to kick because glad it is glowing. Ashes to ash and funk to funk it. We know Major Tom's a junkie, strung out in heaven's high, hitting an all-time low. Time and again I tell myself I'll stay clean tonight, but the little green wheels are following me. Oh no, not again. I'm stuck with a valuable friend. I'm happy, hope you're happy too. One flash of light, but no smoking pistol. I've never done good things. I've never done bad things. I never did anything out of the blue. Whoa. Wanna next to break the ice. Wanna come down right now. Ashes to ashes, funk to funk. We know Major Tom's a junkie, strung out in heaven's high, hitting an all-time road. Mama said, to get things done, you better not mess with Major Tom. Mama said, to get things done, you better not mess with Major Tom. Mama said, to get things done, you better not mess with Major Tom. Mama said, to get things done, you better.
Another one of his most interesting and sort of awesome tracks there. I've always been a fan of that one. That one I just love anything that's odd like that. I just absolutely love it, and I just love his sort of weird voice at the beginning and his layered harmonies. I just think it's fantastic. Also has a very interesting music video if you've not seen it. I definitely recommend giving it a watch. He's sort of on a beach dressed as a clown, and it's one of the first sort of washed out colour videos, and he's got a bulldozer behind him. Very, very interesting stuff and very fun to watch. A bit sort of over the top at points where he starts drowning in the sea, but it's always a good laugh. It's always worth a watch. After the release of the Scary Monsters album, Bowie was once again ready to move on to the next big thing, and this time recruited Nile Rodgers to produce his next album, which many fans sort of view sadly as his sellout album. However, even if this is the case, it's still a fantastic album that re-catapulted him into the international spotlight, allowing him to begin sellout tours of the globe. The album, eventually titled Let's Dance, released in 1983, had several hit singles and some of the first ever sort of mega successful videos on MTV. The lead single from the album all came about when David Bowie went into Nile Rodgers' bedroom at 3 a.m. with an old beat-up acoustic guitar, woke Nile up and played him the bare bones of what would later become Let's Dance. This track is the single from that album. This track is called Let's Dance.
Put on your red shoes and dance the blues. Let's dance to the song they're playing on the radio. Let's sway while color lights up your face. Let's sway, sway through the crowd to an empty space. If you say run, I'll run with you. If you say hide, we'll hide. Because my love for you would break my heart in two. If you should fall into my arms, tremble like a feel your grace should fall. For fear tonight is all. You could look into my eyes. Under the moonlight, this serious moonlight. And if you say run, I'll run with you. And if you say hide, we'll hide. Because my
Great track there. Although many people say it's sold out and it's cheesy, you know what? I still absolutely love it and I still really enjoy listening to it. I mean, you can't just... What's the not to love about that? Yeah, it's a bit cheesy and a bit overblown, but I just think it's a wonderful track. After the release of this album, Bowie was more popular than ever and embarked on the huge Serious Moonlight Tour, which was, at the time, the largest and most commercially successful tour ever. After the Let's Dance period, however, though, he sort of became very, very sort of depressed, and he just sort of started to wonder once again, like he had done in 1976, why was he doing this? And he refers to this period of his life as the Phil Collins period, the period when he was just sort of middle of the road, neither here nor there, comments which Phil Collins, I'm sure, did not appreciate. Bowie struggled for the next 15 years to find creative and commercial success, and after a string of disappointing album sales, he did, however, still produce some absolutely great tracks during this period, despite its albums being a flop. This next track is one of the highlights and hidden gems of Bowie's 80s career, from his 1985 Tonight album, and I think this is one of his most interestingly structured and lyrically songs. This song it just sounds like his earlier stuff. It just sounds very odd and different and interesting. This track is called "Loving the Alien." Another absolutely fantastic track from Bowie there, and probably for me the highlight of his post-Let's Dance 80s output. There's a lot of ropey stuff on there, on the Tonight album, but the rest of it is pure, just magic. After this, David Bowie struggled for quite a while, like I said, to find his commercial and sort of creative mojo, and he didn't really find it until the release of his 1999 album Hours, which sort of was seen by many as his return to form and sort of threw him back into the spotlight. His next album, 2002's Heathen, became an even bigger success for Bowie, and he enjoyed a massive tour for that album, and its follow-up album, 2003's Reality album. Tragically though, David Bowie retired from public life in 2006. He retired from music and he retired from performing after suffering a huge heart attack on tour. He enjoyed a few years of retirement and peace until 2013, when he released a surprise single and announced the release of an album titled The Next Day. This next track was a lead single from that album, and it features a very reflective Bowie looking back on his life. This song is called Where Are We Now?
Had to get the train from Potsdamer Platz. You never knew that I could do that, just walking the dead. Sitting in the jungle under the Straßen, a man lost in time near Cardiff, just walking the dead. Where are we now? Where are we now? The moment you know, you know, you know. $20,000 people crossbars and hookah, fingers are crossed just in case, walking the dead. Where are we now? Where are we now? The moment you know, you know, you know. As long as there's sun, as long as there's sun, as long as there's rain, as long as there's rain, as long as there's fire, as long as there's fire, as long as there's me, as long
I absolutely love that. It's just so wonderful and nice and just sort of so emotional, and it's just such a nice thing to do, to be looking back, talking about being in Berlin and Potsdamer Platz and hanging out and things like that. It's just a fantastic track. After a couple of years of silence, in November 2015, David Bowie announced a new album and a single titled Black Star, which was to be released on the 8th of January 2016 to coincide with his 69th birthday. When the single was released in November, it was evident he had once again reinvented himself, and the track was very avant-garde and featured heavy jazz elements, and about 10 minutes long was the title track Black Star. It's probably sort of the most progressive thing he's ever done, that album, and it just sort of really intense, and it's just sort of uncharted territory for Bowie, incorporating all those sort of jazz elements as well. This next track is the final track from that album, and therefore, if you know what happens next, it's the final ever David Bowie track. Although we didn't know it at the time the album was released. This is the saddest song he ever did, as he looks back on his life once again and all his earthly possessions which he has accumulated in his lifetime, and just simply states, "I can't give everything away." This nearly makes me cry every time, as 2 days after the album was released, he sadly passed away, losing his battle with cancer on the 10th of January 2016. It was then revealed that this album was planned to be Bowie's final, and when you listen to the lyrics throughout the album, it's obvious he's looking back and he's just saying a really sort of nice goodbye and thank you to all his fans. This one's a real tearjerker, and it's the last track of this week's show. Thank you all for tuning in. It's time to have a really big cry now and get really sad. This one's called I Can't Give Everything Away.
Something's very wrong. The pulse returns for prodigal sons, with blackouts, hearts, with flowered news, with skull designs upon my shoes. I can't give everything. I can't give everything. Saying no, but meaning yes. This is all I ever meant. That's the message that I sent. I can't give everything. I can't give everything. The pulse returns to prodigal sons, with blackouts, hearts, with flowered news, with skull designs upon my shoes. I can't give everything